Okay, so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to replace this rather, to be honest, rather cool looking Batmobile looking shroud on this old 5770 I got off eBay with a nice slim large fan that I bought off Amazon. So if we look here, don't know if this will be easy to see, this fan is quite a lot thinner than the shroud, and I'm planning to put two of these cards side by side, so this should allow some airflow between the cards. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take off this shroud and the heatsink, because I'm going to replace the thermal compound as well. So the first thing I would advise to do would be to take out the fan power cable, which on this card is just here. I've seen a lot of these videos before, and people always remove the heatsink and then say, "Oh, but be careful! You know, you've got to be careful you don't pull on the fan power cable." But if you're able to, just take it out beforehand. It makes it a lot easier. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So we'll turn it over here, and we can see the four screws which are holding the heatsink in. We'll get the trusty little screwdriver and unscrew the heatsink diagonally, not all the way each time, and just slowly loosen the heatsink. I do love these screws with the springs on them. You always know that it's actually coming out of the device. Right, let's just be one more turn. Yep. There we go. It should come off now very easily, but be careful anyway, because the old thermal paste may hold the card on a bit tightly. Right, there we go. It's come off nice and easily. We can tell this heatsink's been on there a while because there's some nice dust marks on there, on the all over the place. Right, and then the next thing I'll need to do is, after having removed all the thermal paste with this thermal purifier stuff that I bought, is take this old shroud off. Now, if by some miracle you happen to be working on this card as well, there's, if it's easy to see, there's the screws are in like a triangle shape, and there's some smaller screws as well, which just outside those, just there, but up there, look, the smaller screws that will be able to just remove the whole shroud and the fan in one go. That the fan is on the larger screws attached to the shroud, but I'm not using the fan anymore, so that doesn't matter. So basically, yeah, I'll get cracking to it, and then when I attach the large fan, hopefully this will work out okay. I'm gonna, between the spokes here on the heatsink, cable ties, trusty cable ties. Now I've got a blue PCB, so I'm going to go for some of the blue cable ties. So I'll catch up in a minute when I've cleaned the thermal paste off the GPU. Okay, so I'm going to take the shroud off now. Just thought you'd like to see the nice and shiny copper there. I've still got to use I've got some thermal purifier which I can use just before I apply it, just to give it that better thermal transference, although I don't know how hot this card is really going to get. Just undo these screws here. Right, now one thing I do need to consider is the placement of the new fan. Now, this fan that's on here, hasn't got a border on it, but it's approximately equivalent to an 80mm fan, and this is actually a 100mm fan, so it's a bit larger there. But hopefully won't be too much trouble. Got my nice blue cable ties, not exactly total colour match, but that'll do. Now my idea is just basically slap that on there. Try and get the bottom to line up so it doesn't go any lower than the previous heatsink, and actually have it slightly to the left, because, well, actually that's not going to be possible. I have to try and get the border on so that the fan doesn't contact the heatsink, right? But what I was going to try and do was get some of the fan along here so that it can cool down the chipsets and the VRMs and things. But basically I'm going to just stick the zip ties through the holes, strap it all up, and I'll get back after that. What I'm also going to do is this little plastic guide here is for the, well, it's not very good quality there, but this little plastic guide is just so you can't put the fan in the wrong way. It can be useful to keep the old fan nearby, just so you can make sure that you get the colours right, because what I'm going to have to do is cut this little plastic guide off, or cut one side off, because I've got a 3-pin fan on the new fan, so that has to go in with the right pin, the right wire on the right. The yellow wire is normally used for I think it's so the PC can control the voltage and increase the speed and the RPM of the fan, but that's not a concern on this particular graphics card, so it just goes on like that. So I'll catch up after I've clipped this off using my little cutters, and I'll also strap this on as well. Okay, so what I've done here is I've cut most of this little fan guard away, and then I realised actually you can just, if you're gentle, just pull it away carefully from the wires, and then it should just, oh, careful, there you go, it comes off like that, and then keep these in focus. You see the two little pins there? It just comes off, just pulls off nicely there, and then if we try the fan header now, with the red on the right, there we go, sits on there nicely. And I've also strapped the fan to the heatsink. I've actually put it the other way up to the way that I just did, because this way round it will push the air onto the graphics card that way, and also because there's actually like a fan guard on the back of the fan. I've got another one here, you can see it on the front there. There's a plastic guard, and that'll just keep the blades away from the heatsink a bit, and it seems to be, you know, stable enough. And I've read online, you know, who would go on the internet and tell lies, that cable ties can withstand quite a bit of heat, so compared to how much these graphics cards should be putting out, they hopefully won't melt. So what I'm going to do now is just, because it seems to be pretty secure, I'm just going to snip off the ends of the cable ties, and then stick on just a drop of thermal paste on here, pop it on, screw it all into place, and then try it out and hope that it still works. So I've given the heatsink one final little clean, and I've put a little strip of thermal compound on there. I haven't done an amazing job, but it's you know, you can see that the chip itself is pretty reflective, and I was trying to do a nice downward line, but it's a bit of a failure, but it should be good enough, right? So all we want to do now is we just reattach the heatsink in the opposite way that we took it off, and I'm not going to attempt to do this one-handed, so I'll be back in a second. There we go, we've got the heatsink nicely on there with the thermal paste. Now this was actually a bit more difficult than I thought it would be, because that's why I put the video off, because I knew it was going to be difficult to do one-handed. It was actually quite hard to do two-handed, because there's an angle now on the, there's a small downward slant because of the height of the sink is less. So the way it was before, you could just lie it down to undo it and just undo the screws and it was all flat, and then when you wanted to put it back on, it was the correct height to be able to just rest the card onto the heatsink and do it up again. Whereas this way, I had to brace the card and hold it up, brace the heatsink and hold it up in order to get the first couple of screws diagonally just loose, and then was able, once it was a bit more secure, to get the other two in. So that was that. And also this was almost difficult to get in afterwards, so it was probably better to put in the fan cable first. So hopefully this has made a bit of difference to the thickness of the card. I'm just going to go and grab the other one and check. Okay, so I've got the other card now, and we can see that it's lost its, you know, Cape Crusader looks. But if we go down like this and get this camera flat, we can see that it's appreciably thinner now, which means that when I have these two side by side in the PC they're going to go in, there'll be a bit of an air gap and it'll be easier to slot them in next to each other. So just going to test that this card still works, which hopefully it does. Okay, so I've got the card in now. There we go. It's just nicely in there. It's a bit thinner and it's freed up the full size slot just next to it down here. And the reason I'm doing this is for having virtual machines with full graphics acceleration. So, you know, LAN party. Someone doesn't bring their a desktop or anything. They can have a full graphics acceleration machine. So let's see if the fan starts spinning when I press the power button. When I press the power button, no. Okay, that's not a good start. Maybe switch the power supply on. That'll probably make a difference. Oh, the fan's spinning around. That is quiet. That is. Just actually, I mean, I'm actually surprised how quiet this machine is on boot up. It gets very loud because it's got these two tiny little fans that build up the speed, and yeah, they're a bit over the top. So it looks like that's, at least in terms of the fan spinning, working nicely. Now hopefully it will actually display something, so I'll get back to you in a second. Okay, let's try this. Launch the virtual machine on the graphics card. Come up with the, oh, we've got a display. That's always a good sign. Alright, now I think probably the best thing to do is let this run and try, don't know, maybe a bit of Team Fortress. Let's give that a go, if it boots up at some point. No. Yes, it's alive! It's alive! Since it's loaded, not that I can play one-handed, but so this is a half decent graphics card actually. I mean, oh, maybe not. Maybe I'm getting some FPS dips. How long can I survive without a mouse? Or only using a mouse or a keyboard? Oh, okay, I can actually still kill people. Right, so that's enough of that. What settings have I got on this 5770? 1080p, full screen, high, everything, loads of stuff. Yeah, everything's maxed, so for a pretty old graphics card, probably the settings are a bit too high, but you know, tend to get around 60 FPS, so it's not that bad. So there we go, that was an adventure in replacing the fans on the card. I guess that's about it. Just need to tie up this little wire, I think, and then that's that. Bye.